Paul needs to get his story straight, but perhaps his pants are on fire. Hi everyone, Jason here from Spiritualbabies.net. Currently we're doing a series called Two Witnesses based on a book of the same name, and this is kind of in that ilk. It's on Paul's road to Damascus and that story, and where Two Witnesses deals with two or more witnesses to the same contextual theme. This video is really only going to be on one theme and one witness, so that's going to make it more interesting because you can't really say, well, you know, it's two different people's opinions. This is one person's opinion, one author on one event. I want to thank Clint for sending me this. He did this himself. It's his research, and he forwarded it on to me to turn into something that I do. Alright, so Paul's road to Damascus story. This is one story. We've taken three different parts of the book of Acts. So we're not comparing two different authors. This is one author talking about one event relayed three different times by the same person in the same book. And I think what I'll do is I'll read out these three passages, and then we will talk about the four questions and how those questions are relayed in the text that I've just read out. Acts 9, 3-7. And as he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly there shined around him a light from heaven. And he fell to the ground, and a voice saying unto him, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? And he said, Who art thou, Lord? And the Lord said, I am Jesus whom thou persecutest. It is hard for thee to kick against the stings. And he, trembling and astonished, said, Lord, what wilt thou have me to do? And the Lord said unto him, Arise and go into the city, and it shall be told thee what thou must do. And the men which journeyed with him stood speechless, hearing a voice, but seeing no man. Acts 22, 6-9. Same author, same event. And it came to pass that as I made my journey, and was come nigh unto Damascus about noon, suddenly there shone from heaven a great light all about me. And I fell unto the ground, and heard a voice saying unto me, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? And I answered, Who art thou, Lord? And he said unto me, I am Jesus of Nazareth, whom thou persecutest. And they that were with me saw indeed the light, and were afraid, but they heard not the voice of him that spake to me. The last passage we're going to be reading from Acts. Again, the same author, the same event. Acts 26, 13-14. At midday, O king, I saw in the way a light from heaven, above the brightness of the sun, shining down about me and them which journeyed with me. And when we were all fallen to the earth, I heard a voice speaking unto me, saying in the Hebrew tongue, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? It is hard for thee to kick against the stings. So there are three recordings of the same event in the same book by the same person. So question one, who was in this light that Saul or Paul saw shining from heaven? In the first passage we read from Acts 9, 3-7, and suddenly there shined about him, being Paul, a light from heaven. And in Acts 22, 6-9, suddenly there shone from heaven a great light around me. Paul is speaking, he's talking about himself. In Acts 26, 13-14, and I saw in the way a light from heavens, above the brightness of the sun, shining round about me and those which journeyed with me. So in the first two references, it's around Paul, and in the third one, it's around everybody. Technically speaking, Paul could be right, and he neglected to remember in the first two passages that it was indeed around everybody. So when the event happened, when the light happened and there was a voice, who fell? In Acts 9:4, Saul fell to earth, Paul fell to earth. That being Paul, it says he fell to the earth. In Acts 22:6-9, in verse 7, it says, and I fell to the ground. And in Acts 26:13-14, in verse 14, it says, and when we were all fallen to the earth, a voice said unto him. Now, it is possible that in the first 2 chapters that we read, Paul forgot other people fell down, and he only remembered that in Acts 26, that everyone fell down. But if that's the case, then we have to remember now that everyone fell down, okay? So we can either accept Paul is correct in Acts 26 and that everyone fell to the ground, or that Acts 9 and 22 are correct and Paul fell to the ground and no one else did, and that he lied in Acts 26. So you have to decide now whether the text is correct or Paul made a mistake, because either everyone fell to the ground or they didn't, or some people did or they didn't. Why is that important? Because the next question is, were Paul's companions standing? And you might think this is just an inverse of the question we just asked, but it isn't, because where the first one isn't mutually exclusive, this one is. Were Paul's companions standing? Acts 9:7. And the men which journeyed with him stood speechless, hearing a voice and seeing no man. Acts 22:6-9 doesn't mention whether the men were standing or on their backs. Acts 26:13-14 says in 14, and when we were all fallen to the earth, I heard a voice. So, either the men who were with Paul were standing, as it says in Acts 9, or they were fallen to the earth. Acts 26. Can't be both. And finally, did Paul's companions hear the voice? Now this happens very quickly. There's a light. They fall, they don't fall. They're standing, they're not standing. Then there's a voice. Acts 9:3-7 says in verse 7, and the men which journeyed with him stood speechless, hearing a voice, but seeing no man. Acts 22:6-9 says, and they that were with me saw the light and were afraid, but they did not hear the voice that spoke to me. Acts 26:13-14, and when we were all fallen to the earth, I heard a voice speaking to me and saying in a Hebrew tongue, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? So in Acts 9, Paul heard the message and the people with him heard the message. In Acts 22, Paul heard the message, but no one else heard the message. And in Acts 26, Paul heard the message and he didn't mention what anyone else heard. It is impossible to make all of these work unless you selectively pick Acts 9, Acts 22, or Acts 26 as the only verse that relays the true story. So there we are, Paul's road to Damascus story. Quite a story indeed. Thanks everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed this and you followed along in your own Bibles. I don't want people to just watch this and expect it to be true. You have to study to prove yourself approved. No. Thanks everyone for watching. Make sure that you've read along in your own Bibles so you know I'm not making this stuff up. Thank you, Clint, for sending this to me in the first place. And if you have similar study notes that you think would make interesting videos, and I can't guarantee I'm going to do them, but you could send them to me via Facebook or YouTube, or send me information on my website, Spiritualbabies.net. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel, and you can come over to my website to support me in the work I do, and we'll see you all again very soon. Bye-bye.